What's up?
What's up? Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, cool, cool. Anyways, so I just had a quick question. Well, maybe it might not be quick because we're gonna be discussing stuff. But so when you say testament, doesn't that really mean covenant?
Right.
Okay, and so I'm trying to understand what you mean. Can you kind of go again? What you mean by New Testament? What do you mean? And instead of using testament, let's use the word covenant because that's
That's
what it
fine.
is,
I mean,
right?
it says here testament, but it's the same word used for covenant too.
Okay, so for a covenant is a force. What's the context
Actually,
of that verse right there?
it's talking about why the new covenant is better than the old covenant.
Okay, and so what is the new covenant?
It's the new law that came with the new priesthood.
Where does it say it's a new law?
And if you're reading your New Testament, you're going to find the Christians obeying different instructions than they obeyed under the Old Testament.
So are you saying the Ten Commandments is a different instruction?
Well, we can get to that, but what I'm saying is that when you see them, like for example, under the Old Testament, what was the penalty for adultery?
It was death.
Okay, but what about under the New Testament?
Under the new covenant,
Yeah,
I
the
would
New
say it's
Covenant.
also death.
That's not true.
Why not?
Because we have in First Corinthians a fornicator who it says was with a man's wife, and the
Okay.
entire assembly knew about it, and all they said is to put him out of the assembly
Okay. Why did Paul do that? Why did he
because he's
recommend that approach?
because he's teaching the new law.
So you're telling me that a fornicator, which is sin, right? Or is there no sin under the new covenant?
We read about people needing forgiveness of sins under the new covenant. So I don't know where you came up with that. What I'm saying is this, and you just did, you see it. You said, why would he take that approach to it? Okay, well, under the Old Testament, nobody would have took that approach to it.
Well, let's backtrack real quick. In the ancient times or in the old covenant times, I guess we'll say, right? You couldn't just stone a person,
You
right?
had to have two or three witnesses.
And not even just that, you still had to go to the gates. You had to go to a judge, just like over here. You can't
Okay, but
just.
that
You
this
could
goes
see
against
someone. You
what you're
could see
saying.
someone. Excuse me. Please let me finish. You could
We
see
already heard.
someone.
Okay.
You could see someone murder someone here, right? You could witness that, like right in front. I could, like somebody could kill you, all of us, but you'd still have to go through a system, a judgment system.
This
You still
isn't
have to
helping
go
you.
through a jury in order for you to
Okay.
be found guilty.
Okay, none of this is helping you. You want me to know? You want me to tell you why?
Uh,
Because all this stuff that you're saying, go through a jury, go to the city gate, go to
right.
before
Okay.
the judges, go do
Right.
that. Paul didn't say to do any of that. So you actually just dug yourself in a deeper hole.
No, no, no. I understand I understand where you're going with that. I understand where you're going with that. Now, when we go with the new covenant, right? It doesn't mean that the the judgments aren't there. Just
What
because
did it
Paul
say?
didn't, just because Paul didn't do that, Paul was illicit. He was talking about mercy and forgiveness.
What does this say right here?
There is made of necessity a change. Also, there is made of necessity a change also of the law.
There you go.
Okay, so that doesn't mean it pertains to all of the law. That could pertain to the priesthood, right?
Okay, but you're saying the old law is still in effect, and the point is the old law was in affiliation with the.
Absolutely, absolutely. Are you telling me that the Ten Commandments aren't still in effect? Are you
Look,
telling me and then you're telling me that you can sin. So if there is no law, then that means there's no way to
no.
sin.
Okay, look, I said we're under the new law. I don't know where you're coming up with me thinking there's no law. Like you're
You,
just in your head right now making stuff up with your imagination. But look at this. Colossians 2:16 and 17. Let
uh,
no man therefore judge you, meaning condemn you, and look what he says concerning.
listen,
This
that's not that's see you're taking that to meaning that they're
then what does it mean?
it means that those of us who are keeping the Sabbath, who are following the new moons, who are keeping holy days are the ones that are being judged.
No, he says, let no man judge you, meaning condemn you concerning these
Yeah,
things.
so
He
don't
says,
condemn me because I'm following the Sabbath.
that's not what he's
Don't
saying.
condemn me because I'm following the new moon.
That's not what he's saying.
That's
These
exactly what he's saying, brother.
He's saying these individuals, the Colossian, and no one, there's no commentator that's going to agree with what you just
It doesn't
said. You
matter what
just made that
commentators
up.
say, bro.
You just made that up. Look what it
I
says
didn't
here.
just make that up. You could
You
look at
did.
historical context and you could look at the context of Colossians and see that's exactly what's happening is
Look,
that these new believers are being
look,
judged for now because now that they're engrafted and now that they're following the most high, they are now following the Sabbath. They are now following holy
no,
days.
look.
Yeah.
Look, I'm showing you right here. He says these things are a shadow of things to come. So he's telling them they don't have to keep those because those things were the shadow. And he's saying they're no longer under the shadow because the shadow was taught by Moses. He says, but the body is of Christ. Like, this would make no sense if what you're saying is correct, which it's
Actually, it
not.
just means that we're going to get to a point in our walk and in this time when Messiah comes back that we're going to be doing these things, that we're going to be now resting on the Sabbath day, that we're going to be doing the real
Look,
holy days of the Most High, not Christmas that's rooted in paganism
okay.
or Easter rooted in paganism. We're actually going to do what's actually in the Bible.
Look, he says, let no man therefore judge you, meaning condemn you concerning these things because they weren't keeping them. He says, because those things are a shadow of things to come, but the
I think
body
you,
is
I
of
think you need to
Christ.
reread it, bro, and also read the historical context of it and see that new believers are. If you even go to Acts 15, you'll see that they were first told
Look,
to not
hey,
do four
hey,
things.
listen. The
Yeah,
whole context, you said read the context. The context is that the old law was nailed to the cross.
handwriting of ordinances against us. That's what the religious leaders were writing, like the
No, it's
Talmud and the
not.
Mishnah. I'm not
No,
gonna
it's
stop,
not.
bro.
No, it's not. The handwriting of ordinances was a reference to the Old Testament law.
Bro, it was references to the Talmud and the Mishnah, bro, that we're
No,
going
because
against. That's why you should.
no,
Hey, that's why
look,
that's why Jesus said, "Listen to those in the seat of Moses, but don't do as they do," because they were going
no,
far from the
look,
law.
listen, because this is parallel, harmonious with Ephesians 2:15. Having abolished in his flesh the enmity, even the law of commandments contained in ordinances. That's not the religious leaders' traditions.
Yeah, it is, bro.
Okay, well,
All
look at
right,
what this.
all right, peace,
Uh,
bro.
it's yeah, not good the way that you're studying.
I could say the same thing to you, man.
You haven't proved anything. I've shown
You
you
haven't
verses that
either.
talk
You're
about
just
the
arguing
abolishment.
your theology and the doctrine that you've been raised on, bro, instead of
I
actually
haven't been
reading your
raised on
Bible
this. Look
yourself.
what it says here. What does this say?
That's the law of the death. What's the law of the death?
You're saying this isn't the Ten Commandments?
No, that ain't the Ten Commandments, bro.
Okay, look, we're about to show you. You just put the nail in your coffin. Look what it says here. We are delivered from the law. Okay, so it's talking about the law, right?
Which law? Because if you
Yeah.
if you're reading right, if you're reading and you're defining the words correctly, you'll know that he's different. Even especially in Romans that there's different laws he's speaking of,
Look,
like the law of
look,
death and the law of life and the law of the spirit.
look. We're gonna show you the next two verses. Show us what the law is. You ready?
Go ahead.
What shall we say then? Is the law sin? Would you agree that the law is a reference to the same one mentioned in verse 6?
I don't know. I'd have to look up the definitions and look up the. I'd have to look at the
Look,
concordance and see if that's exactly what he's speaking of.
the oldness of the letter, is that the old law?
I can't tell you right now.
Okay, well, then there's no point in even discussing this.
Okay, I agree. But then, as you can see, like if you read in Romans, there's different laws that he speaks of. It's not just one
Look,
law, like
this
you're
is
saying, right?
look,
Would you agree with that?
no, chapter 7, look what he says. I speak to them
What do
that
you
know the
mean?
law. Look, that's the Old Testament law. I speak to them that know the law. Look what he says. The woman which has a husband is bound by the law to her husband as long as he lives. And then
Uh-huh.
he goes on and talks about you are become dead to the law by the body of Christ. He's explaining why it is they can be brought under the New Testament. He says the motions of sins which were by the law, that's the old law. Now we are delivered from the law, that's the old law. He says, is the law sin? That's the old law. Look what he says. I had not known sin but by the law, that's the old law. For I had not
Okay.
known lust except the law, the old law had not
Okay.
said, thou shalt not covet. What does it say said, thou shalt not covet?
Okay, so the law tells you what sin is, okay? That's
No, look, what law
what it's
says
saying,
thou shalt
right?
not covet?
Except the law had said, "Thou shalt not covet." The law,
What law?
the Ten Commandments.
Okay, so it says the law is the Ten Commandments, and look what it says right up here in the previous verse.
So what
What
does
does
it mean?
that
What,
mean?
what, what does that exactly mean to you? That we're delivered from the law?
What does it say?
It says you're delivered from the law. That doesn't like. What does that mean? Tell me what you think it means.
It means that it was nailed to the cross. We're no longer under the old covenant, including the Ten Commandments.
So you think you're delivered. So okay, what's the new commandments then? Because that's what you're saying is that there's a new law, right?
Yep.
Okay, what's that new law?
Every instruction and every belief that we're told to believe in the New Testament is part of the new law.
And so you're saying there's no new part of the old, like the Ten Commandments is not part of the new law?
9 out of the 10 are restated, and the only one not restated is the Sabbath day.
Because the Sabbath day doesn't need to be restated in that time.
Okay, now you see, look, we just showed you that we've been delivered from the whole law, and 9 out of the 10 have been reinstated, and not the Sabbath
There's
day.
nowhere that says
No,
nine
it
out
wouldn't
of
need
ten
to
has
be.
been reinstated.
It would
Nowhere.
need to be reinstated
First, you say we're delivered from the law, and then now we gotta do it again. 9 out of 10, we gotta do again. That don't make sense, bro.
because it tells us to do 9 out of the 10.
Where does it say to do only 9 out of the 10?
We have it repeated. If you look up when it says, for example, when it says have no other idols, go to 1 John chapter 5, and it says, beloved brethren, it says flee from idolatry.
Okay, I'll
So
give you
you see
that.
the
So what about
okay.
what about the four commands in Acts 15 that they give the new believers that was from the old law?
They never said observe the Sabbath.
Wait a second, and then if you go to Acts 15, it'll say some they'll say like when James said, oh, by the way, this is what the Spirit told me. Let's do this. Let's tell them to stop fornication. Let's tell them to stop eating
Never told them to
stuff from
observe the
blood,
Sabbath.
right? And then he says, for they will learn to Moses and when they go to the synagogues on the Sabbath day. So why
That's
they?
not what it says.
That's what it's. Go read it. Acts 15. Go.
Okay, I'm gonna read it, and that's not what it says. It says they don't have the synagogues. They don't have Moses. It
Let's
says for
go.
the
Acts
Jews.
15.
Okay. You're about to be shown wrong again, and you still haven't dealt with Romans 7:6. We're delivered from the law. You still haven't dealt with Colossians 2 and your misunderstanding of it. It says, let no man
I
condemn
did.
you in
I
the
did.
kingdom
You
of
have a
men.
misunderstanding of Colossians, and you also have a misunderstanding of Romans as well.
No.
Yeah, because you're just pulling like a couple
Look,
verses.
he
That's
says the
that's what the Christian
Gentiles.
church loves to
Look, he
do.
says the
Go ahead.
Gentiles,
Uh huh.
which are turned to God. He says,
Okay.
my sentence is that we trouble them not,
Okay.
which from among the Gentiles are turned to God, but that we write to them that they should abstain from pollutions of idols, from fornication, from things strangled, and from blood.
Hold on. Let's
He
stop real
says,
quick. Let's stop
he
real
says
quick.
for Moses, he
Okay.
doesn't say,
Uh huh.
look, he doesn't say there the Sabbath day, so we're going to keep going. For
Okay.
Moses of old time hath in every city them that preach him, being read in the synagogues every Sabbath day. He's saying that the Gentiles weren't learning this stuff.
So that's why they're gonna learn that stuff when they go to the synagogue every
They're not
Sabbath
gonna
day.
look, and here's another one of your problems. Look, you're getting people to listen to Moses, and Moses said to listen to the one who would come after him.
Hey,
Moses
Jesus and
truly
Moses are
said,
saying the same thing, bro.
Moses truly said, a prophet shall the Lord your God raise up unto you of your brethren, like unto me. What does he say? Who does he say people will listen to once this person is raised up?
Yeah, hear him, bro. I agree because he's saying exactly what Moses is saying. So yeah, hear
No,
him.
we are,
Yeah.
listen, we already
Yeah.
went through this,
Now,
that the old law taught to stone adulterers, and the new law doesn't say to stone them. And you're saying that under the new law, we're learning the same things as the old law.
no. First off, where did
So talk about
just
that.
because Paul did
So talk
not
about that.
just because Paul didn't just because he kicked out some of the congregation doesn't mean that he didn't follow that exact example.
It did, because the man was restored back into fellowship.
Hey, that's fine. It doesn't mean he has to go through that route. Why can't mercy and forgiveness be the way to do this? Because that's
Because
what he
it
did.
mentioned, it literally mentions, look what it says here. You're like having a trouble understanding that we're not under the old law. Look what it says. He that despised Moses' law died without mercy under 2 or 3 witnesses. And you're like, look, why can't they just have mercy? Why don't you ask that to them?
He that despised Moses' law died without mercy under 2 or 3 witnesses. What's what's that one verse gonna? Of course, you're gonna you could use
Because
that
you're
one
making
verse.
up an excuse. Why can't they have mercy? Did it say there was mercy under the law of Moses if you were witnessed by 2 or 3 witnesses?
Yeah, dude, you could have mercy under the law for sure,
Okay.
man.
Well, I'm just gonna let you go because you're just, there's no
Okay,
talking with
okay,
you.
that's cool, man.
Yeah. I mean, look, the witnesses would have been people who witnessed the act. I mean, he's saying, what about the people who saw? Couldn't they show mercy? It says here, if you saw it, you don't show any mercy. They died without mercy. So yeah, and I've never ever heard anybody teach Colossians 2:16 says, "Let no man condemn you because they're keeping these things." They weren't keeping these things, which he says, which is a shadow of things to come. So he's saying, don't let people trick you into observing the shadow. Don't let people beguile you, deceive you into following the shadow of the body. The shadow of the body isn't the body. That's the point that he's making. Oh, Damien, there were sanctions for mercy, the cities of refuge. That's a good point. Yeah, everyone's saying that I should have taken them to a bunch of different places, but what we showed was sufficient. Another one that I read in the comments, someone said Galatians 5:4, whosoever of you are justified by the law, you are fallen from grace. And that's the Old Testament law. So, right. Yeah, I mean, all over you read they're delivered from the law. They're observing different commandments than the law actually commanded. Like, for example, that individual that was just on the phone, he doesn't go to Jerusalem once a year for the Passover. You know what I mean? He's not keeping the Old Testament law. He's not doing animal sacrifices. So, yeah, and the Bible's so clear, very clear on all that.